Sledgehammer Games are really trying to shake up the Call of Duty series this year with Advanced Warfare, and you've doubtless seen the fantastic reveal trailer which unveiled Kevin Spacey as Jonathan Irons, one of the leading characters in the game, as well as heard tons about the exoskeleton and other future technology that looks set to alter the gameplay quite significantly. Last week I was privy to another little section of the single player game in which Irons sends his troops into a hostage situation to rescue the Nigerian president, who's been taken hostage by the KVA terrorist organisation, which are the main antagonists in the game. Now there's some really fancy kit on show, like being able to create an X-ray-like window to spot and mark targets, climb metallic walls with magnetic gloves, a bit like Spider-Man. Well, he doesn't have magnetic gloves, but you know what I mean. And there's also this crazy kind of sound bomb which nullifies the sounds in a given area so that you can silently breach through a ceiling with something quite explosive and not be detected. But there's also going to be a ton of shooting bad guys and bombastic set pieces, and the major moment from this level gives it its name actually, which is Traffic. It finishes off with an over-the-top sequence in which you hop from the top of one bus to another, taking out SUVs full of terrorists as you try and save a van full of hostages. But what's going to be really fascinating about the single-player campaign is seeing how all of these gadgets come together, and if they can do it in a cohesive fashion without feeling too much like a James Bond film. I mean, if you remember how Q would always somehow manage to give Bond exactly the right gadgets that he needs, so that there's just that one moment at the end of the film where he gets to pull out the exploding pen or whatever. And hopefully it doesn't resort to that. But balancing out all of these gadgets and abilities in multiplayer is going to be a completely different matter, as you'll have to pick and choose what you want to take into battle with the new Pick 13 system. As you might have guessed, this is heavily inspired by Black Ops 2's Pick 10. I mean, the name's practically the same, but there's an extra 3 slots to cater to some of the new abilities that you have with the exoskeleton. There's also some really extensive character customization, which allows you to pick genders, faces, camouflage patterns, and even like your shin pads, that kind of thing. And this really goes hand in hand with the randomized loot boxes that unlock both custom items and sometimes even more powerful customized versions of weapons that you already have. The neat trick here is that if you unlock a new gun and want to make a few little tweaks to your loadout between rounds, you can then dive into the firing range, which is a nice and flexible little holographic firing range that changes the scenario in front of you depending on which stall you walk up to. And that is absolutely instant. Like, you just press the button, you're in there, and you're firing away. You can walk up to the stall and fire away. Of course, that's never really going to replicate how the game plays and how your loadout will actually work in the multiplayer itself, and this is where having the exoskeleton really mixes things up quite noticeably. What's nice is that even given that this is the year of the jetpack almost, Advanced Warfare feels really nice and distinct. You won't be soaring through the skies like in Destiny, and your leaps and bounds aren't as high as in Titanfall. There's also no wall running there, so there's a big difference between the two games in that regard. But instead, Advanced Warfare's exoskeleton is really quite nice and hefty and will bring you down to the ground really quite quickly. Half the learning curve is going to be figuring out how to get around with your jetpack, with not just a double jump, but also the ability to click in your left stick and do a dash in one of 4 directions, much as you can do on the ground. But the other half is then going to be figuring out the new level design with a lot more vantage points and ceilings which you can get up to, which you can actually reach and then have that as like a kind of sniping nest. So you need to be really aware of your surroundings and the 3D verticality that's been added into the map design. The exoskeleton-assisted animations are really fast and furious and can actually be a little disorienting when your character's arms flash in front of your eyes and pull you up onto a ledge, which you didn't really expect to manage to make. In fact, there's a lot of these kind of fast animations, from pulling out an exo ability like the Riot Shield, to firing off a grenade from your wrist-mounted launcher. It all just happens in a ludicrously fast blur. In terms of the actual game modes, you've got a bunch of fan favourites like Kill Confirmed and Hardpoint, but also some new ones like Uplink, which is a sporty twist on the standard capture the flag formula, but it's somewhat similar to Unreal Tournament 2003's Bombing Run, where you can throw a satellite ball between each other whilst trying to deliver it to an end goal. throwing it through the goal scores you 1 point, but jumping through with the ball in your hand scores you 2, so you always want to jump through it if you possibly can. But it's a lot of fun, and one of my favourite things is being able to throw the ball at an enemy who's then got it in their hands and can't use their weapons, whilst you cool and collectedly pull out your own guns and just gun them down while their hands are suddenly occupied. It's also recently been announced that the multiplayer is being joined by a cooperative mode, which is a return to the survival and horde mode style play of Modern Warfare 3. Just with, you know, exoskeletons everywhere, and even on your enemies actually. That aside, you're also no longer going to be starting from scratch whenever you begin a new match, and all of your unlocks and abilities will persist from one match to another, which should help people get much further than they could do before. Overall though, I think the real key thing is that this is still going to feel very much like a Call of Duty game. Sure, there's the stuff like double jumping and firing off laser-based weaponry, but it looks like there's a good mixture between revolution and evolution that means that this is still going to be unmistakably Call of Duty. I hope you've enjoyed this quick look at Advanced Warfare and my rambling chat over the top of the gameplay that I captured, and we will see you next time.
Hardpoint locked down. Hardpoint contested.